car buyers are finally broke. Yes, we finally hit a point in which now we've seen the stabilization. We've seen cars sitting on the lot a lot longer than they have. Even with stable interest rates as well as stable economy, relatively speaking, we're finding people just don't have the money. I'm not in the same position today as I was even 2 years ago, where I was actually thinking about buying a new car. I was shopping around looking for a new car, maybe an SUV, possibly a new pickup truck. I was looking at what the options were available in the market. And I know other people that were doing the same thing. We were on a bit of a feeding frenzy, if you will. I mean, I feel a lot of people were feeling very motivated. There was a lot of agitation in the market. Seemed like shortages just created a little bit of this extra excitement. And of course, buyers just wanted to buy something new and fresh. And I too was no different. Again, 2020, 2021 was a place where I was really starting to shop around, thinking about what kind of options I could get. But we knew before we hit that final absolute destructive inflationary crunch where absolutely we saw the interest rates climb, just before that time, people were on an absolute buying frenzy. Then, of course, we hit that point where the interest rates started to skyrocket, but people didn't get it. They were still buying, which is really bizarre, but usually that's what it takes to curb. You get, of course, the banks decide to crank up the interest rate charges, and of course, in doing so, the idea is to curb inflation, less spending, but the spending didn't reside, and people kept buying. Now, we're finally at a place where not only do people not have the money, but clearly there's indications now that the market is finally collapsing. Buyers just don't have the cash that they had a couple of short years ago. I, too, are in a position where I'm not even thinking about buying a new car today because they're too expensive. Sticker price has gone up. Inflation just holds strong. Expensive food rates. We're hearing a lot of the local oversized food conglomerates that are taking everybody for a proverbial ride are actually saying that they didn't make the big profits that they hoped that they would. And of course, unfortunately, they're going to have to pass on some of the increases to the consumer like you and I. And so it sounds like we're going to have to lock ourselves in, strap ourselves in for a long ride of increased food costs. We know the big cities, obviously you go to the four corners of the US, the Seattle, New York, LA, as well as down in Miami area. And in Canada, we got Vancouver and Toronto are the big hotspots where house prices just continue to climb and escalate through the roof. But in doing that, people don't have the money for rent. They don't have the money to buy a new house. And clearly foreign markets are scooping up a lot of this inventory on the market space. But either way, that still continues to drive inflation. But we have another scenario here that basically I want to talk about. People just don't have the cash to buy a new car, truck, or SUV, and the indications are real. So I'm going to say something that I know none of you are going to feel bad about, as neither am I. But yes, in fact, car dealers and OEMs are feeling the squeeze. They're feeling the pinch. They're feeling the fact that customers are having a less and less excited attitude about buying that high profit margin vehicle, that top end SUV, or that overpriced pickup truck, or that sports car that has new technology. People are taking a second look at their finances and deciding that can wait. And as a result, a lot of these big OEMs are now in a place where they have to basically sit down, hold on tight, because now customers are getting a little bit smarter. But it's this big cost of living that's obviously creating a little bit of a push for the banks to increase interest rates. And since February of 2023, interest rates have climbed 17 basis points up to about 6.9%. Well, there's a sliver of good news in all of this. The average monthly payment for a new vehicle actually flatlined and stayed relatively level at about $722 from the same time last year. Clearly a very expensive car payment, but it's actually leveled off a little bit. Partially because of inflation, people have run out of money and people are just fed up with these overpriced, ballooned, inflated MSRPs of a lot of these OEM manufacturers. So there were actually more positive signs for you and I if you've been shopping. The average retail transaction price, as well as automotive incentives, have buyers paying an average of $44,000, which is about a $2,000 decline from last February, and about $4,700 less than in December. I know I've been checking out some car lots, looking at some pricing, because I too have been looking for vehicles, and now we're no longer seeing a lot of those addendums or the amendments and what have you, where you see the sticker and they're actually adding a little extra cost on because market adjustment fees, dealers were getting literally greedy, and you're seeing a lot less of that. Now, if anything, what you're seeing are discounts off of sticker price. That's right, invoice sticker price is actually off. There's discounts to be had out there. Not every dealer is doing that. Not every manufacturer is doing that, but there is a lot of that starting to go on. Now, I know we've talked about this. Many of you have recorded and actually dropped in comment section that even if they give us $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 off, it's really insult to injury, because at the end of the day, they ballooned up 40, 50, 60% in the last couple of years. So what is another $2,000 off when we already fattened it up about 10 grand? But the fact remains is whether you feel it's a great value or whether you don't feel it's a great value, it's going to be tough to turn this train around. But at the end of the day, if we're starting to see vehicles, and we are, so with some great deals, offerings, that's right, a lot of these dealers are getting hungry. They're starting to pitch a lot of their 2023 model years for aggressive markdowns. They're literally slicing and dicing prices at an alarming rate, which is a good sign. And yes, granted, you may not have the money, even at the discounted prices. Keep your eyes and ears open. Maybe look at possibly a late model used, because where we start to see this happening on the new market, the wholesale market is starting to feel the burn too. Although there's obviously a little bit of a lag there, there may be some opportunities to gain yourself a great car with low mileage for a decent dollar. I mean, we know many dealers were selling vehicles before they even got off the truck or the boat, and often they were already accounted for. So by the time they rolled in, and trust me, I looked at this. I was down at a Lexus dealer recently, and I walked out and they had rows and rows and rows of Lexus vehicles. And I actually pulled in a salesperson, and they came over and said, would you believe it? They're actually all sold. They've come in off the ship, and now they're basically ready for customers. The customers have pre-ordered them, they've shown up, and now they're basically in the back lot waiting for delivery. So there was literally no new SUVs by Lexus available on that particular lot, which is an indication that they were still very hot, hard to get a hold of, and especially when we're talking about hybrid vehicles, those were especially hot. But even hot models like the Corvette Z06, I've been watching those too, because I think that's a hot car that I'd possibly like to get my hands on one day. I've seen those prices come down. Now what you're seeing with those are, there's still some of those out-of-touch dealers that are still asking them huge dollars for it, but you know they're just sitting on that and using that as a little bit more of a museum piece to show off in the middle of their showroom. But I have found numerous Z06s now actually priced very aggressively to the point where they're almost basically at sticker or just slightly above. So prices are coming down on even the most desirable of models. That's an indication, because that truly is where you really start to see where you have the really popular models now in a place where they're not selling. I mean, it's easy to pitch a bare bones plastic seat manual gearbox Honda Civic if it's priced right and it's bare bones, but anybody can buy those. But when you see vehicles that basically everybody wants them, like a Z06, it just means that, you know, heavy discounts on those models generally mean that that's a turn in the tide, and there may be some aggressive buys coming up soon. And of course, with that, discount and incentives have climbed up. This February, we're looking at about a $66 increase up from January alone, now at a point where the average incentive is climbing up to about $2,565. Clearly, again, more markers that both dealers are hungry and customers don't have the money. They're literally broken. Their backs are broken, their necks are broken, and their wallets are broken, and they don't have the money to buy. But the dealers are really trying to dig in and enhance the buying opportunity and trying to squeeze the customer into the dealership and spend their hard-earned dollars. Now, JD Powers actually says that the average car is sitting on the lot a lot longer. For example, we're up 2 weeks to about 43 days from same time last year, which is an indication that people just don't care anymore and cars are sitting. And of course, this talks about the floor plan costs and the credit that these dealers are going to incur. Now, there may be some benefits and these dealers can absorb a month or two, but as you start extending these out, and we know Ram, Stellantis, Jeep products are starting to see long waits, 150 days, 160, 170 day actual time on the car lots. A lot of these vehicles just are not selling, no matter what the incentives are. And there is actually a measurement of the amount of vehicles that are sold in within 10 days of hitting the car lot. That actually decreased from 58% down to about 32% from this time back to 2022 same time. So clearly now we're starting to see push through all of these market changes that we've seen in the last couple of years, and now we're finally in a place where these cars are sitting longer, and the amount of vehicles that are snatched up before 10 days is up has drastically dropped off, meaning cars are sitting on the car lots a lot longer. Again, translation, people don't have the money. Dealers get it right. People aren't buying, not the way you want them to. Price these vehicles accordingly. I'm not going to buy a vehicle at these overpriced, highly targeted and overpriced gouge Fiestas. I know a lot of people that are ready to buy a vehicle, but they're simply not going to spend their money because there's way too much money on the line. Here we're coupling the overpriced charges on the MSRP, even with a small discount, that doesn't compensate for the 40% increase over the last 3 years. And on top of that, interest rates are still leveled off. Clearly, people do not want to get snookered and be underwater on their mortgages and loans. They've heard enough about this news and they don't want to get snookered. People are getting educated on this. So dealers, if you're listening, drop your prices. Not 1,000, not 2,000. drop your prices. And of course, with that said, check that video. You're going to love that. Ford, Ram, and GM respond because customers are mad and they're not buying vehicles. You want to see that video. Very popular. Tells the whole story. So hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. We'll see you all real soon. Bye-bye.